We're going to start in the book of Judges. The book of Judges. Powerful book. This is a transitional period in the history of God's people and found in the Old Testament. The judges, basically, this is what they were. They need to say they all had a call of God in their life. Many of them even were prophets, or at least very prophetic. All of them walked in the integrity of God. All of them were hated by at least some people, which that goes with it, right? Jesus even said, beware when all men speak well of you. But their first and foremost desire was to please God and to help his people, to bless his people. Many of them were called out of complete obscurity. Some of them had issues in their life, Samson being one. He was one of the judges. But anyway, from the judges in this period that spanned hundreds and hundreds of years, this period eventually ushered in, the last judge was Samuel. He was a prophet judge, and he was a transitionary figure that went into the first king of Israel, which was really against God's will, but he allowed it because he got tired of listening to the people. So anyway, that's a 8-week teaching in itself, but I got to keep moving here. So, then of course we had King Saul, then need to say the very famous King David after King Saul. So this period was still, you could say it was after the conquest all throughout Canaan, but it primarily dealt with the backslidings of God's people and how typically they got overthrown again. God would raise up, many times they're again out of complete obscurity, he would raise up a mighty man of valor. Many times you will see God address these judges as mighty man of valor. Gideon is one. You're familiar with him, right? He was one of the judges too, found in this book. And God used him in a miraculous way that still today we get great inspiration from. So this particular man who became one of the judges, there again, basically we'd call him the leader of Israel. Not a king, but definitely the given leader that God chose. He anointed, he appointed that given man. In spite of even some of their flaws, God used them mightily to deliver his people out of bondage. Typically, it was always to deliver them out of bondage and to keep them on the path to keep serving God. These men were extremely brave, did phenomenal things by the power of God. I love this particular judge out of all of the leaders found in the book of Judges. His name is Jephthah. Verse 1, Judges 11. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, but he was a son of a harlot. Oh, I must have read that wrong. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a prostitute. That can't be right. I'm going to have to process that one and come back to that. And Gilead begot Jephthah. Gilead's wife, I said Gilead, who is married, had an affair with a prostitute, a child through him. Okay, but Gilead's wife, are we following this? This is the first time I've read this, so this is all new to me. So verse 2, so Gilead's wife bore sons. Okay, so now his wife is having children. And when his sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, you shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Now they were being very diplomatic when they said that. Verse 3, then Jephthah fled from his brothers and dwelt in the land of Tob, and worthless men banded together with Jephthah and went out raiding with him. Man, I think I got the wrong scriptures. I think I'm using the wrong guy here. Because today, see, no one would use him. He wouldn't be invited on Christian television. And if he wrote a book to Christians, no Christians would read it. Just because of his genealogy alone. So let's peel back the facade of plastic Christianity, and let's go ahead and totally destroy religion for the next few minutes, can we? And let's get real as God is real. And let's look at the Bible and let's see how God uses people. And let's see that most of the time that the people that God uses, most people look over and despise. But aren't you glad that God didn't overlook us and didn't despise us? So let's go back to this. Judges chapter 11, verse 1. Now Jephthah the Gileadite. Let's just look at what his name means to begin with. Because remember, when a child was born, the Hebrew custom was outside of an angelic visitation and telling the parents, this is what you're going to name him, which that happened a few times. Outside of that, the parents waited for quite some time before they named him. They waited either for a direct word from God as to what they should name this child, because the names at that day and time, especially even in the New Testament, when a person was given a name, it stood for something. Their name had a backstory. Their name represented something that they would become or something they already came out of even when they were born or during, of course, the pregnancy. So we see all of those cases in the Word of God. Now, eventually, the father, Gilead, had to name this boy who was an illegitimate child. We'll look at that more here in just a moment. And he gave him the name Jephthah. Now the word Jephthah, the name Jephthah simply means he will open. Or it means this, to cause to flow. It means to free, to draw a sword, and to conquer. So God knew that this child was going to have some divine favor. Because the first time you see that phrase, actually the derivative of the word Jephthah, the root of it, if you will, it's found in the book of Genesis, chapter 7. It's when God opened up the floodgates of heaven and flooded the earth. We commonly refer to as Noah's flood, right? So Gilead knew that this child was going to need the windows of heaven open over his life, or he's going to have hell on earth until he dies. Because not only was he born out of wedlock, but his mother earned her living as a prostitute. So he thought, I'm going to have to give some purpose behind his name. So his name is going to have some kind of connotation that God is going to have to open up some doors for him that no man can shut and no devils in hell can shut. Because outside of the favor of God and outside of the benevolence of God, this boy growing to a young man and an older man is going to have a miserable life. So I'm going to name him Jephthah, and I'm going to prophesy over his life that one of these days God is going to open up something. Somebody ain't hearing this. That God is going to open up something good in his life. So Gilead said, listen, son, I want you to realize you'll conquer this thing called life. You will overcome. You're going to go through some difficult passages in life. You're going to go through some hurt, some heartaches. You're going to experience everything on this planet. But in the end, which is all that matters, in the end, somebody say, in the end, you're going to conquer. So we see his name. That was my opening. We see his name given unto him. And the Bible said, this is what I love about God. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a harlot. Now see, this is where about 98% of Christians get off the train, get off the bus, or get off the plane. This is where they exit, because they can't reconcile how God can use someone like that. Now they say they can until that person comes into their life. Because, see, in theory, they want to believe it. In theory, they even say it. But in reality, it ain't happening. Do you ever notice that God always uses people that we would have never chosen? Every single one in the Bible were like that. Every single one. Try to think of one, not now. Try to think of one that was the epitome of having it all together and God used. No one. No one. The only one that had it all together, need to say the consummation of perfection, was Christ. But even God made it to where people in the natural wouldn't receive him. It took a spiritual connection to receive him. I mean, come on. He grew up in Nazareth. Why do you think Philip and Andrew are talking? They go, man, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? I mean, no one good lives there. Highest crime rate, highest murder rate, you name it. I mean, nothing good comes out of there. Today, you want to call it the slums, you want to call it the ghetto, you want to call it the barrio, whatever it is. Not disparaging to people who live there, but just the geographical proximity. Jesus came from that. That's why the religious people overlooked him. And that's why it took fishermen and tax collectors. People who were blue collar and people who were rough and tumble and people who were very thick skinned. And people, if you cross them, they'll fight first and ask for forgiveness later. I mean, those are the kind of people that were attracted to Christ, and he made them disciples and apostles. Somebody say, I'm in good company then. But anyway. But I love this about God, don't you? I love this about the heart of God. He always chooses people that the world would never choose. And we get so enamored in Christianity especially. And we've developed this, I mean it's like Christian groupies. Because there are certain rock stars now in Christianity. I got to go on. I digress. I want you to do this with me. I can't get off of this. I want you to do this with me. Go over to 1 Corinthians. I was going to just quote this. Look at this. I'm going to show you. You're in the Bible here. You're in it many places, but I'm going to show you this one place. You're in it, and I'm really in it. Watch this. 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Let's just jump in verse 26. For you see your calling, brethren. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 26. For you see your calling, brethren. You have a calling, right? Yours is different than mine and vice versa, right? Only you can fulfill your calling of God upon your life. Only I can fulfill God's call upon my life. Amen? So, but somebody say, I have a calling. You've been called of God. Amen? So, you see your calling, brethren, that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame things which are mighty. I wish I had more time for that. Look at this, verse 28. And the base things. The base things, the vile things, the lowly things, the insignificant things. It's a wide spectrum of definition here for that word. The worthless things, as some people would see worthless. God has chosen the base things of the world and the things which are despised, the people which are despised. God has chosen, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. One of the reasons why God chooses people that people say they can't do it, ain't no way, I know where they came from, is because God said, I'm going to use them because everyone will know it was God and not man who did it. And in many regards, the church has become just the opposite. We're seeking the approval of man. And we're trying to do it on our own to polish and shine, to say, oh, yes, I've been perfect since I was born. I've never done anything wrong. It's always, God looks for people that everyone else has overlooked. I'm looking at the overlooked. You're looking at the overlooked. See, it doesn't matter who overlooks us. All that matters is that God never overlooks us. That's all that matters. God has never overlooked you, never can, never will. Let's go back to this. I'm going to try to wrap this up. We are definitely going to pick this back up next week. Look at this. He was a man of valor, but he was a son of a prostitute. Reconcile that. Real quick, side note on this. The reasons why Christians really can't reconcile that in people today, they'll read their Bible and say, oh, yeah, that's wonderful how God does it. But they don't apply it to today. They want you to have a perfect pedigree if you're going to minister to them. And all the time, they're flawed all kinds of different ways. 8 ways from Sunday. But they want you to have a perfect pedigree across the board. I remember the first church we pastored, this guy, he was on the board. And he was also boring. But anyway, he asked me, he said, what seminary did you graduate from? And he knew that I didn't. I hadn't gone to seminary. I said, didn't attend seminary. He said, well, you're wasting your time here. Now, I wanted to get construction up in his face, but I thought, well, if I'm going to pastor this church, better not. So anyway, long story short, God eventually got him out of there, and we stayed and turned that place around. Revival broke out, so a lot of wonderful things happened the years we were there. But anyway, long story short is don't ever let people sell you short. When God reconciles your life, it doesn't matter what's connected to your past. If people overlook you because of something of your past, you need to pass them on by. Can I help you with this too? If people leave you when they find out some things about you, it's best they leave. Because when you start going through hell and high water, you need to know who's with you. As the old saying goes, if something's going to happen wrong on that plane, I want it to happen on the runway. I don't want it to happen 36,000 feet in the air. And if someone's going to go south on me, I want it to happen while we're out in the tarmac talking. I don't want them to go south on me when I'm 38,000 feet in the air. And I got a pilot and co-pilot this whole thing. And I'm also all the flight attendants. And I'm also putting oxygen mask on everyone. I want to know who's with me. I want to know who says, we got you. We're here. We ain't blowing out on you up here. So it's kind of good to know. I'm going to say more about that next week. It's kind of good to know. Like these people, family. Brothers of Jephthah said, get out. Might be the most hurtful thing that ever happens to you, but you know what? God has something better planned for you. I'm going to say that till next week. It's going to blow you away. You better come ready to shout and rejoice next week, because I'm going to teach you all about God allowing you to experience some pain to bring you to a better tomorrow.